Good evening and welcome to BBC News. Today the topic is going to be about poverty and a divided Britain. A Britain where some fill their trolleys with fine wine while others skip meals to heat their own homes. A Britain where the rungs on the ladder have grown further and further apart. Is this the cost of a living crisis or something much deeper?
Alright, that's quite interesting. And furthermore, new figures from the national statistics reveals that one charity calls Britain's Shameful Inequality, where the richest 10% spend about 18.7 pounds a week on cigarettes and alcohol, which is actually the same amount the poorest spend on gas and electricity, wine versus water bills, furniture versus food. Dukan actually, from the Equality Trust, called this disposal grotesque. Grotesque. Yeah. I was just kidding. And Britain is now one of the most unequal countries outside the developing world.
Unequal, yes, and you can see here, that the bottom percent of the British income.
Hvad fuck sker der?
The bottom percent of British income
Right here.
is right here in 2022 in Great British pounds. That the bottom percent have a gross income of less than 20,000 pounds a year. Can you believe that? That is poor as shit. And then you see here at the top, the very richest of them all have a gross income of 120 pounds. That is 6 times as much as the bottom percent. So there you can clearly see that there is an inequality in household income in Great Britain. Thank you.
A new survey by the National Union of Students show that 1 in 10 students now relies on food banks. Almost all students, 96%, are cutting back on essential and 1/3 live on less than £50 a month after rent. Is this what higher education looks like in 2025? A degree in depth and a future on hold?
Good to be back. Did you miss us?
Alright, to set it into perspective of how serious this is, the manager director of the Iceland supermarkets reports that some food banks users are declining potatoes because they cannot afford the energy to boil them. When even a potato becomes a luxury, something is deeply wrong in our society. This can't be true.
Alright, the poorest 5% of households have only 8% of the nation's income, as you can see here. And the richest fifth hole has 36%. The top 10% own 43% of all wealth, while the poorest half only own just 9%. The 50 richest families own more wealth than half of the entire population.
Let's go.
To elaborate from earlier, a new report from the National Union of Students reveals the dark reality that more than 1 in 10 students now relies on food banks, double the number from just 6 months earlier, with 96% cutting back on essentials and 1 in 10 unable to afford basic sanitary products. So we must ask ourselves, how can students focus on studying when they can't afford basic necessities?
GG.
The pressures are piling up. Students are living on less than £50 a month. Students are unable to pay for course materials. And students are forced to neglect their health just to save a few pounds. An NUS spokesperson warns that soaring rent, food prices and energy bills have pushed students to the brink, with 92% reporting that their mental health is suffering under the weight of rising costs.
Alright, in addition to the new data from annual family spending reviews, it highlights a divide that charities have called shameful. While the average weekly household spend sits around $531, the richest 10% spend around $1.14 thousand and the poorest just 188. These contracts are unmistakable. The richest spend around $43 a week on furniture, which is more than the poorest spend on daily needs like food. They spend $18 on cigarettes and alcohol. The same amount the poorest spend on gas and electricity. This sharp contrast shows the figures exactly as reported. Duncan Exley of the Equality Trust says these numbers reveal how grotesque unequal our country has become, adding, we are one of the most unequal countries outside of the developing world, and frankly, it should shame us.
The director of the Equality Trust warns that the rungs on the ladder have grown further and further apart, making it harder for ordinary people to get ahead. He argues that millions are struggling to put food on the table and roof over their head, while a tiny number of people are rich beyond the dreams of every rise. But that's becoming harder and harder for most, with the young being condemned to a worse set of circumstances in which to live, work and raise a family. He says that evidence shows more equal societies have safer children, healthier families and strong communities, and argues politicians to act to bridge the gap between the super rich and the rest of us.
According to Adrian Curtis of the Trust, rising food bank use reflects the increasingly desperate situation facing those on very low income. He explains that people have to choose between heating the house or eating breakfast, a choice that shows the seriousness of this crisis. He insists that policymakers and politicians from all different parties need to look at the reality of life for people living on very low income, emphasizing that solving the crisis will take everybody to take their part.
Politician. Alrighty, politicians insist they are addressing the crisis, but charities argue that Britain is drifting towards a future where inequality becomes the new norm. So we ask, what kind of country does the UK want to be?
That was it for today. See you next Friday.